Welcome everybody to the final town hall for the Open for Business project. This project was supported by the Queensland Government through Advanced Queensland's Deadly Innovation Strategy. And there was two parts to the project. The first part was the support hotline, and many of you watching today may have actually spoken to some of our agents over the last 12 weeks. And the second part was support through social media, and we were sharing links about COVID, opportunities and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things I was really excited about that we developed was the micro stories of Indigenous business of Queensland. And that part I hope we get to keep doing well after the project is over. But before I start, I would like to acknowledge country. I'm here today on Gia and Nauru country in North Queensland, and I acknowledge the unceded sovereignty of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here in Queensland, but also Australia. My name is Leesa Watego, and I'm the Managing Director of Iscariot Media. And in this last town hall, I thought what would be really interesting is to do a bit of a wrap-up of the project, but also to reflect on the times. We can't underestimate we are in a global pandemic, and we're just at the start of whatever that means for the globe, for the country and the globe. And I thought one of the words that we've heard a lot of in the last 12 to 16 weeks has been the P word, pivot. And I really want to explore what that means and really get a sense of, for me, I guess, and this is my being a teacher or a trainer, everything's a learning opportunity. So what does this mean? How do we get better at what we're doing? And, hopefully it will not happen again once we're out of it. But disasters happen. So, how do we as small business owners cope with it and manage it and, not just survive it, but really thrive? To join me in this discussion, I have three really special guests. I'm very excited. Our first guest is Claudine. So Claudine is an experienced commercial and editorial photographer turned visual media strategist. She does some fantastic work. Go and Google her. I'll put the links in the show notes. So Claudine creates visual communications and campaigns that grow causes and cash flows. Claude, that is the best elevator pitch I've heard. I love it. Causes and cash flows, absolutely love it. So Claude is based on the Sunshine Coast, and she joined the Open for Business team from the very beginning. She was one of the first people we called. She experienced the COVID impact with all of her in-person bookings cancelled, or they either cancelled or they froze once lockdown happened. And even as a sole trader, she was able to get support through JobKeeper and through a diverse background of skills as she added that to the team. She was a call operator that we referred to as a generalist because of the diversity of her background. So welcome, Claude.
Thanks, Leesa, for having me. That was an awesome intro.
I know, you said you're just so amazing. Awesome. And she is very amazing. Our second guest is Tiare Kelsell. Tiare is a Nunda and Yamaji social media specialist located on Gimoy, Wallumbara, Yirinji country in far north Queensland. We are across the globe today, across the nation today. Tiare has worked with Indigenous micro and small businesses across Northern Australia, so that's North Queensland, NT and WA. She's been doing that for the last 5 years and helping them to really keep up to date with marketing trends and technologies on digital platforms. Girl after my own heart. She brought her experiences to the Open for Business team as one of the founding Generalist call operators. So thank you, Tiare. Both Claude and Tiare, superstars. Mm-hmm. And also joining us, hello, Brett, our soul male today. Brett is from the Wow Factor. They're located in the Sunshine Coast and in Sydney. So Brett is actually joining us from Sydney. Hi, Brett.
Hey, Lisa, good to be here.
So the Wow Factor are in the middle of a significant pivot. They're based in Sydney, the Sunshine Coast, as I said, and they create temporary and permanent displays and fit-outs for corporates and other organisations. So Brett has been in the industry for over 20 years, and COVID has seen their business change significantly, as, of course, events have just kind of disappeared for the last 16 weeks. And so with restrictions placed on gatherings, their project suddenly stopped, and this has meant they've needed to get creative to keep their business going. And we are really going to start talking about, we're definitely going to talk about the P word, pivot, with Brett as well. So first of all, I really wanted to talk generally, this has just been the craziest adventure, one building a hotline and really then having an opportunity to talk to businesses across Queensland. So first, Claudine and Tiare, you've both been part of the Open for Business team that have been in contact with the businesses. So what have been some of the biggest challenges you've seen our businesses face over the last few months? Tiare, want to have a go?
Hi, everybody. One of the major things that started, like we're talking about June 2020, this is when the kids were all were sent back from their boarding schools. This is when all of a sudden there were these unexpected family reunions and everyone had an idea of what they could do, but then reality happened. So you had to try to, I think a lot of the business hats went off and family hats went on. And then trying to scramble to find out where their businesses were going to function in all of this. And I know that none of us expected this to go this long. So that's the kind of phone calls we were getting and that we were making out, call outs, and the word lockdown also triggered some of the negative tones in regards to stolen generation, and that kind of ties to it, and expectations of what others were going to do for them in regards to, like, when the kids were sent back, for example, a lot of families thought that the schools were just going to organise the education and not really this homeschooling format that they ended up having to do. So that took a lot of time and stuff like that. So that was the general start. And then our tourism businesses, they went from 300 bookings booked out for the year to just nothing. It was just ghost town for them. So there was a lot of...
do you think it was my understanding, and I guess what I've been talking about for the last few months, is really those businesses that were reliant on visitors and human movement. Yes. Humans actually moving, Brett, people going to events and people gathering in cafes and going to places. They're the ones that have been probably the most significantly hit in the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And June is the lead up to NAIDOC. So everything was circulating for that. So dance groups were rehearsing. It was huge. Like even the coffee shops, and like you were saying, the schools were getting ready for their NAIDOC week activities, and they had guest speakers already booked. So it was that impact. It was transitional.
Yeah, no, it's just, and I guess one of the things is we've had. We have businesses kind of across the spectrum. It's such a hard, people always ask me, so tell us about Indigenous business in Queensland, and it's like, well, it's everybody. Like everything's a spectrum. We have hobbyists, side giggers, nanos, small, medium, not so many larges, not many super corporates, but we've got this whole spectrum, and then we've got across all industries, across all sizes. And the way that businesses have really been impacted by COVID has been everything from, I have people who are just like, well, I'm just on JobKeeper and I'll wait it out, hibernating. But I do think that they're hibernating but are actually still working. Yes. Because there's a lot you can do even though you don't have customers. And then we've got people who are so busy they're working 7 days a week. So, and then everybody in between. It's just such a varied and diverse experience of this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Claude, what do you think some of your perceptions of the last few months have been?
I think it's difficult to pinpoint like any one particular challenge because, like you said, it's so diverse. Like call to call, we would kind of have to adapt ourselves. Like we would be talking to maybe a small artist that goes to the markets where they can't be at the markets anymore, to having a sole trader that might have one employee and they're navigating the JobKeeper change up and their reporting requirements. We were talking to labour hire or mining companies or construction crews that had huge staffing issues and apprenticeship and traineeship worries as well. So I guess one challenge it was kind of related to their industry, so we kind of had to adapt to each size and industry. But I think the one particular challenge was that people just didn't know where to go to find the right information. Like, there's a lot of information out there, but the right information for their industry and their business size was something that was kind of a common thread amongst whatever size or whatever industry. Like, they really just didn't know where to find the information. And I guess like what I've found rewarding with this job was that we could kind of just with one click push that out to them with that big resource that we had, and that as a team we all sort of chipped in and put together. So it was really good to be able to provide that, and kind of lifted, because it was so heavy initially, it kind of lifted that burden off their shoulders from the start, that we could just provide that to them or come back to us if they needed something else. Yeah.
Because there's often quite a sense of isolation when you're in business.
Oh, definitely. And I think even just for myself, I think you can be really stubborn in business. Like, you don't want to admit that you're in trouble, or that, you need help, or that you need to reach out and, ask the tough questions, or just ask someone if they've been through it, just to make it a little bit easier. I think business owners in general have that stubbornness that they just want to slug it out, because that's what we do pre-COVID anyway. But in COVID, I think that's kind of all intensified, and you just can't be stubborn. So it was good to kind of just talk with them and show them that we're going through the same thing as well.
I think a lot of in the beginning of the project, it was there was all that. We did a lot of work researching all of the services and the opportunities that were out there.
Surprising
businesses, but you really have to know what you're looking. It's almost like you need training just to fill in some of those forms.
Yeah, definitely. And then you kind of it's like I think you explained it once, Tiare, which was like a rabbit hole. You just, you click in one that leads to another, and then another, and then another. And so it's just, that process can be really frustrating even just for us. So, imagine being, in that situation as a business and not being able to find what it is that you really need to find.
Yeah. So it's been, I don't know, everybody's different. I know for us, when I think my last trip, I was doing some training I flew back from Canberra. I forget what Bega and Jindabyne. I'd done some training in Bega and Jindabyne, and I was on the plane back to Canberra, from Canberra back to Brisbane, and this is like around about the 15th, 18th of March or something, and that's when there was just this intensity of the news cycle, and this is happening, this is real, this is not a joke, this is not something that's happening somewhere over in China, this is here now. And we didn't really know what it meant. And I think governments were still grappling with it. And I remember there was because I could only tell probably by end of April, but I know that there was this period from mid-March to early April, like 2 or 3 weeks, where I have no doubt that my blood pressure was going through the roof, that I was just living on edge, and I was doing real survival sort of stuff. I was going, okay, let's look at the bank balance. What invoices are due in? What projects have we got going? We're trying to check in with clients and work out kind of where we were positioned. And it was just this, I don't know what I must have appeared like to my kids and my family, who I don't think I really quite grasped what was, maybe they did. They would have processed it in their own way. But there was 2 weeks of OMG, what am I doing? And it was just this heightened sense. Like I could feel it was really quite physical. And I don't think I think that, and yes, I have friends and I work with lots of people, but and it's only when I came out of it, I went, I actually had a good night's sleep last night. And then I had a good night's sleep 4 or 5 times in a row and went, oh, that's what's going on there. I was in a state of something, and I don't even know what the words were because I'm not clinical, but there must be a word for it. But how did you kind of, I mean, you're both small business owners as well, and kind of in my intro, Claude, I flagged what it was like for you. Like, can you just kind of reflect on that sort of emotional, mental kind of stuff, and for yourself as well as for some of the people that you've spoken to?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really stuck out to me in the call, so I'll talk about one of the callers, and being in the far north Queensland, I thought that we would be impacted straight out. As soon as it said China, the Chinese airlines were going to be closed to far north Queensland, and then something happened down south with the cruise line, and we had 88 cruise liners set up for the month. So I knew that there was going to be a mass dropout. So I decided to look for businesses in the far north Queensland on the call list, and it was amazing. It was amazing because they had said exactly what. They said the first 2 weeks was hard. Nobody knew what was going on. Our kids were coming home, and all of a sudden, for the first time in their living history, they had access to their children without someone coming in and going, you need to send them to school. And their schools had scrambled and tried to put an online program out for them. Then they realized the network wasn't going to handle that. Each family had like one mobile device, so it couldn't be online learning. So the schools express posted up a USB of schoolwork and told them to print it. And there was only one printer in the whole community, and that printer ran out of ink and ran out of paper. So that was their first 2 weeks, and they went, you know what? Week 3, survival instinct stepped in, and those in the communities, they just took their kids out bush. They took them out fishing, hunting, and they said it was the most amazing magic time. They loved the lock-in.
Oh, wow.
And then I had other calls to, and one of the statements or one of the questions I'd asked, like, do you have any country mob, and how are they dealing with the lock-in? And one of the engineering companies said it was really interesting because they would try to call their family around 6 o'clock in the communities, and that's when everybody was calling. So none of the calls could get through. And he said one time one bloke comes running and goes, boss, he's going. That bloke he's walking away. He's going. His sister's run away. Because of the network dropout, he found out later on, no, she didn't go away. She just went in a dinghy without telling anyone where she was going, and everybody was looking for her. But they decided to switch off on the Friday, have a barbecue, settle everyone in, and then everybody could use the company phones at 3 p.m. just to call home to see what was going on. Mothers wanted their young men back out of their apprentices, back from regional centres, and send them home. To send my boy home. I don't want him dying out there. So that was kind of the impact there. And then for my business, all of a sudden I had lots of contracts, but then their money dried up.
Yeah.
So everybody wanted to do stuff and have stuff done. Like, sis, it's all quiet now. Let's talk about what we were talking about before. But they had no income coming in to make it happen. And, normally around that time, the digital grants were coming in for small businesses. And so they kind of relied on that money. And then those grants didn't happen at all. None of the normal the grant launches didn't happen. So, and being 2020, the year of Indigenous tourism, just went bang. So, that was some of the stories that came my way.
So I think from you, Tiare, it's kind of like, I think there's some bigger questions around, in times of crisis when a disaster happens, those folks who are the most impacted are the people who may be the most marginalised or, low socioeconomic, because if there's no infrastructure, like just basic stuff like having the internet and a printer, like that's just such, for some families that's very normal, but for other families, and when this all happens, you've got nothing in the community and all that infrastructure. So the lack of infrastructure becomes even more heightened in moments of crisis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And these are communities, because in far north Queensland we have the cyclone season.
Yes, so you're used to disasters.
And some areas were bushfire country, so we're used to preparing for disasters, but not for the length of time.
Yeah.
Normally you're out of the game for 3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe. The train line could be down for 5 weeks, but months with your kids at home, it just, it was different.
Claude?
I think you said it really well just before, like that. Everyone kind of felt it in a real way, and everyone, I think, kind of commented when we would yarn and just have a chat that it was heavy, early in the piece. Like, it just felt heavy, and it wasn't only the pandemic. It was, Black Lives Matter happened. Followed up from that. So, the emotional, as a business, even just myself, probably talking for myself here too, but, just we didn't really talk about it a lot, I think, because we were in it as, just with our own mob. But when you're in business, you've got so many hats to wear already, like your admin, your marketing, your own PR. You've got so many hats, and then you have pandemic hat goes on, and then Black Lives Matter hat goes on, and then it's all just one big hat by the end of it. It's really, really heavy. So I think it was Black Lives Matter was a really a big time where people felt a lot of pull and emotional strain on top of the burden of the pandemic as well. So I think for our mob, it was a lot. I'm not going to say that it was more difficult than any other business. You can't really say that, but I think just the culmination of that together. I mean, I think there's a saying, and I've used it in my business. Sometimes when you have pressure, that's how diamonds are made. Our mob are good at making diamonds. We've been there. We've made diamonds before, and we still continue to make diamonds. But I think now, it's just another thing that we've had to work through as well. So,
I guess you just kind of said it before. It just made me, what you said before made me think of something. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about having. Thinking about Indigenous business as its own sector. Like, yes, I'm an employer, so of course I care about work cover and insurance and HR things, but there's this other work. So yes, I could align myself with the mainstream business sort of things, but there's this other world and these other considerations and other protocols and culture and connection and responsibilities that actually we're not the same as that. We are the same, but we're actually different, which is why I think having a hotline that was just for Murrays, I think was really important, because we could have all called the mainstream hotlines and they existed, but having a hotline where you could actually talk to other Murrays on the end of the line, I think that was valuable, because there are issues that were.
Absolutely. I remember there were times when just saying, we're 100% Indigenous task force. And they're like, oh, well, sis, you could just feel it, just relax. And they will give you, and they gave everything. They just opened up better.
Cultural safety, and I think, if you're on a wage, on a call center, you're not feeling the same as what maybe someone is in business. Like, we're doing the same challenges. We're walking the same path as what were, and we're the same mob. So, it made the conversation easier, because, like I said before, we're very stubborn business people, but knowing that we were all on the same path actually made it able to be such an easy call or an easy yarn.
And yes, I run a business, but I also go to Black Lives Matter marches. Like, it's like, yes, I do that, but I also do that. You will find me in both spots talking about business, but talking about that as well. And I don't think we can separate those things. Awesome. So I guess the next thing, we're in the middle at the start. I don't know where we are. History will tell us at what point on the such and such of August we are in the scale of this thing. But what are some, and we're going to bring Brett in a second, but what business is always about, for me, I always say business is, you've got to be super creative, you've got to have discipline, you've got to have grit, you've got to work when everyone else is partying. But you're also, for me, it's also about solving problems for people and finding solutions for your customers. So how have you seen, and in a normal world, this is how I solve my customer's problem. I take them on a tour. But if I can't do that, what do I do next? So how have you seen, what are some of the experiences of Indigenous businesses that have adapted or pivoted? Oh, can I just for the, we do some training elsewhere, and I kind of like, what's the difference between this and this? And we identified that pivoting is about using the same tools that you have to offer a different service, whereas adapting is simply taking what you already do and offering it in a different format. So, for instance, I do training, face-to-face training, and when COVID hit, we turned what should have been a face-to-face program in the same room with everybody to face-to-face via the computer screen. So for us, that's just simply an adaptation. Whereas, and I'm going to bring in what Brett does, that's absolutely a pivot where you say, I've got these tools, I currently make these same tools, I can go and make that. So, but Tiare and Claude, what are some examples of pivoting and adapting that you've seen from the people that you've been speaking to over the last 12 weeks?
I was speaking to a cultural tour person, and he was all lined up, and he had like 300 contracts just drop out of the sky.
Okay.
And so when I spoke to him in June, that was a long phone call. It was more listening than anything else. And then I was able to send him some links, and kudos to him. He actually followed up on a lot of those links. And so I followed up with a call in July to find out that he had taken on extra training. He's like, I'm trying to learn what this Zoom thing is, and I bought myself a deadly computer off secondhand, and then just last week or a week and a half ago, I was able to call him up, and he was like, yeah, Sissy would have been laughing at me. I had my camera up, and I had moon glow going on, kind of like moon glow going on, and then the tablet fell off, and I'm trying to do these things, and he said, but he's found contracts around Australia delivering what he would normally have done in classrooms that are now in Victoria, in Tasmania.
Wow.
Whereas he was delivering face-to-face in southeast Queensland. So, and his daughter, he's looped his daughter in. She's the one taking the phone calls and making the bookings. And he said it was really funny because when I was trying to teach her in her teen years, she was like, nah, Dad, nah, I'm not going to do that. And now it's a dad and daughter thing. She's tweaking the lighting. She's checking the background, like get that T-shirt out the back there. And then they've got the dance group who's now just doing tuition, like little things and stuff like that. And it's been amazing. That was a great adaptation for them. So, yeah, it's been good. And it was good to hear,
But it's also, what's fantastic also is he's actually increased his market. He could, if he was doing you're limited by, it's completely unscalable because you can only, if you can't be there delivering in person, you've got no product.
Yeah.
Whereas now he can do it around Australia. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and branching out overseas to other Indigenous mob overseas and stuff like that.
Oh, that's deadly.
And it went from, like in June, it was a long, drawn-out phone call to, Sis, I'm really busy now. Have I told you enough? And that's been amazing. So, like, okay, yes, catch her, But and that's been a rewarding experience of the Open for Business hotline.
No, that's fantastic. Claude, you got any stories?
There's not so many individual stories. It's just more like everyone just fast-tracked everything going online. Like, whether you had a product or you didn't have your own, socials going on, or whether you didn't have a website, or even just like taking what you do currently and really prioritizing what you wanted to do more. People started assessing what was a priority and then like just doing it. Like, whereas I think pre-COVID didn't have, you kind of got in your comfort zone, or, you had a little bit of hesitation. The hesitation was kind of removed a bit because a lot of people felt like that was what they had to do to kind of have their business survive, is to go online. So talked a lot about going online and what was available support-wise, how, what was the first step to anything from like, how do we now scale this at a big, site, a massive scale. So, I think it was more the online, but also that, people wanted to connect with other people in the same industries to information share. So where it was competitive maybe before a little bit, now it was more about let's all information share. So I think by default, we've actually come together as a community. Like I know in my kind of photography community, we're all very much closer now because we would share resources and tips and, things that were kind of behind paywalls kind of cracked out a little bit, and got distributed, so that we could help each other just, not just survive, but thrive. Like you said before, we needed to actually take massive action to thrive. So, and
that's awesome. So I guess I'm really conscious of we're at the moment very lucky in Queensland. I know that there are a few cases and there's some issues around folks in corrections, and my heart goes out to all of their families. And I know that there's work being done there to try to certainly make sure that folks are looked after properly. But in Queensland, I guess we're not what's happening in Victoria isn't happening here. And one of the things that because we, as the Open for Business team, we've been having weekly meetings. One of the things that I've heard you guys, the agents, in terms of how people feeling this week, one of the phrases that I think it's Tiare, you say it regularly. I don't know if you say this, you realise it, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Like I'm optimistic, but I know something could happen. Or I think another phrase that some of you use is, I've got a plan B. If this happens, then this happens. So people are like, people are almost, we're okay, but if we're not, then I'm going to do something else.
Yeah, and in the hotline, a lot of the like the numbers of calls have dropped because people are getting busy. So links are happening, action is happening, and before the next lockdown, we want this to happen. And if the lockdown happens, then plan B, we've got this set up, and plan C's and plan D's. And it's really awesome to see how diverse their thinking has gone, as well as it's funny. It's a streamline of activity aimed at just in case.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I guess that's the idea of having a, contingency plans. And I remember I did some of you might, if you haven't done it yet, there's the Murray Indigenous Business Masterclass through Melbourne University. One of the lecture, I did it a few years ago, and one of the lecturers there, I remember he said, it's ideal if you can have 6 months in the bank. It's like, oh my God, I barely have 1 week in the bank. And now I understand what he means.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, that's what he was talking about. Like, old white fella, okay. Yeah, that sounds very, and he did have that, but he's just a single consultant and stuff. But now I'm like, oh, that's what they're talking about. And I guess one of the other things that we've often talked about in our meetings is about financials and people being just not 100%. And I know I'm the worst one for this, but I'm, being across the money stuff.
The numbers, right? And just the admin side of it as well. I think it's just getting those systems in place. It's probably the last thing that you think about in business because everything else seems more important. But I guess when this happens, it actually becomes more important, and that kind of like grates you a little bit because it's the kind of the things that you never really liked to begin
I
with.
sort of take nice photos. I don't care about the rest of it.
Just skate by with, a few data entries here or there.
Now,
you heard about the businesses that are like, that pack of paperwork that you never get to. Well, now it's like, well, I've got no excuse. I have to get to it kind of thing. Exactly. So it's good.
Now, Brett, you have been, Bretty, you've been listening to us talk for the last, little bit. I could see your head going, oh, yeah. So you've done a massive pivot in your business or in the kind of middle start of that. Can you just talk us through a little bit about how you guys are going and what it was like for you and I guess, what you're doing now.
It's been interesting sitting here and listening to the stories, and I've been shocked by that. My heart has just been expanding, and it feels like my chest is going to explode with just the feeling of stress and overwhelming hardship that we're all feeling. It all just came back as you were talking about it, so very so definitely an interesting time. As you said, we were building displays for events, and a lot of our clients were in the travel industry, so events and travel industry, both, two of the first places to go. All of a sudden I was, had my existing business with all our debts and debtors and all my staff and, our leases, and all our business was gone. And I just thought, my goodness, what on earth am I going to do? And like you were saying about your people, you just didn't know where to turn. You were getting mixed messages. You were trying to call and get help, and you just couldn't find it. So it was a crazy time. And so obviously I was racking my brain. I didn't want to let my staff go. I wanted to look after them. They had small, young families. So I thought, I need to look after my people. So I just thought about who we were, and we're designers and makers. And I thought, well, we're just going to have to design and make something else. And I didn't know what that was, but I just thought I'll just have a little think about that. And randomly a friend said, well, why don't you think about your home, the beautiful home that you've created, and why don't you think about something around that? And I didn't quite get that, and I went away and had a think about it. And that's when it came to me, the wow factor home.
Beautiful.
And so what we're now doing is designing and making products for homes.
That's fantastic. So you get to use all of the same, the materials and the equipment and the talent. You just, instead of focusing on conferences and events, you're just saying, what can I do with this wall here? There's a wall right in front of me. I'm not at home. There's this blank wall here. What could we put there? Yeah.
And that's right. And so not only did I want to support my people, I wanted to support our suppliers and our manufacturers, because they were in the same boat. So I thought, how do we use what we're doing with you now in a different way?
Yeah, that's perfect. So how's it going? So what I said, did I say this in the interview? Did I just say this? There's no such thing as a no-brainer. I can't remember if I've talked. This is when you're saying there is no such thing as a no-brainer, because no-brainers take a lot of work. There's people who have no idea what is involved go, oh, yeah, you should do that. That's a no-brainer. Of course, Brett. Can I buy one now? Where are you up to? What's that process been like for you as a business owner?
And that's exactly right, because I'll tell people now, they'll say, well, what are you doing now? And I say, I'm busy creating this new business. And they say, and then they'll say, well, yeah, but what are you doing? What else are you doing? Like, they don't understand the enormity of what's involved. So we are going from, business to business to consumer, and selling our products online. So totally different ballgame, different market, different products. So we've had to think about the design and product development. So we've been prototyping products, thinking about the pricing, the messaging around those products. We've had to teach ourselves about e-commerce, so Shopify. So we've had to learn all about that. Social media. So it's very, so all these new areas that we had no idea about, and we have engaged the professionals, because it is a totally new area and we need to do it properly, because, as you know, post-COVID, the online market is saturated. So we need to make sure we do this right.
Yeah, I guess, and that's the thing, is that everyone, so it was not a differentiator. If it was a differentiator before that you were online and your competitor wasn't, it's not there now, because everyone should be pretty much everyone's online. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So how far away from launch do you think you might be?
Well, we keep telling everyone, it's another 4 weeks, and then we find another mountain that we never knew about, and it just keeps going. So we're hoping by the end of September we should be able to launch the first range.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So, so pivoting is, again, is not is not as easy as people think it is, and but you know, that's kind of the nature of the game, whether it's adaptation or pivots. I think that that's something that we absolutely have to just build into our skill set on top of everything else that we do as small business owners. So I want to ask one more question. I should have flagged this with you before so you could prep, but I didn't, sorry. But I'm going to ask each one of you, knowing what you know now, we're in August, the end of August, we've been doing this for a while. If you could think of one or two pieces of advice for people, what do you think? What's your one or two pieces of advice for small business owners trying to manage this in the pandemic and managing these kinds of times? So, Claude, you're on my left, so you're on my right. So
Yep.
go 1, 2, 3.
This is a piece of advice that I give to my current clients with communications, because I agree with you, Brett, is that things are so saturated online. It's really hard to break through, and everybody talks about ideal client. How do I find my ideal client? And it's kind of this like unicorn mystical thing that but what are the steps to find my client? So I offer this piece of advice to people. Don't think about ideal client. Think about moments of consumption. Think about when people are going to buy your product and what are they feeling or wanting in terms of being or interacting with your product. So if it's an experience or service, what are they feeling in order to find you? And, you know, if you're a product-based business, when are they likely going to trip into your product, you know, online? Or why are they online in the first place? Are they looking for entertainment? Can you provide that? And then link into your product that way. So don't just think about who is it I'm selling to. Think about the times when people are looking for something online. Why are they online? And then try and link your product to that.
So you mean so it's Friday night with a glass of wine and some cheese, and I'm scrolling. Yeah.
How can you make your experience, your service, your product relate to that particular time?
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Claude. Tiare.
Always works when you unmute yourself. I like what you said earlier, having that 6 months. And I'm thinking 6 months of ideas. Being social media management, you look at the 1 year calendar and what would we do this time next year and stuff like that. Yep. And how that can apply even now, having Father's Day coming up, what kind of unique thing could you offer for a father, even online? One thing I did do for my granddaughters down south was book them in with a princess. And they're like, yeah, it's a princess. And so got her to read the stories and they were like, oh, okay. And they didn't actually like it. So I rang up one of the aunties in WA and I said, can you dress up like a princess and can you just read them a book? And it was a book that they owned. And it was just reading with a familiar voice. So booking ahead for the unique experiences, like the unique shopping times or the unique product line that you may have, and then keeping your unique voice to that, keeping your culture to that. So one thing that I've been, I don't know if it's just me, but on the hotline we make sure that I'm Yamaji, so I'm Nanda Yamaji. So I'm from a nation of Yamajis, so that's different. So we're a country of nations, and what Gumby is being sold as by these mob might be different by these mobs. So, and being able to tell your story and link that to your own mob is definitely something that people are liking. They're liking the Indigenous experiences.
The authenticity.
It's fresh off Black Lives Matter. 2020 was definitely supposed to be the year of Indigenous tourism. So going to the kids' school now. There's welcome mats in language. You go into Kmart and there's that banner that welcomes you in that language. So it's there. Everybody wants to hear your unique voice. So get loud.
Get loud. I actually started writing my on my phone last night. It's like, okay, for Iscariot Media, because yes, we talk about social media, but I don't post as much on Iscariot as I should. I started writing, okay, Leesa, you're now going to do this properly. So I started writing a list last night of all of my 2021 posts. And Leesa, you'll do this. Now, Brett, I know that you're obviously an experienced business person with the wow factor, but your wow factor home is a new business. So you kind of got your established and your new startup sort of stuff. Both hats are going at the same time. What would be your one or two emerging and startup pieces of advice for Corey's, Murray's, Bob out there?
Interestingly, I just randomly came across a saying when this all happened, and it was something along the lines of what seemed like the ending was just the beginning.
Yes.
And that was so true for me. I had no idea what I was about. I thought it was over. It was a great loss. And then this amazing new beginning with the things that we're doing. We're learning so much. And part of the new projects we're doing includes Indigenous art, which I had never done in my life. And I'm now doing it and loving it. So you never know what opportunities may come out of an ending.
Fabulous, fabulous. One of the questions I get asked constantly when I'm talking to people are, oh, Leesa, this must be the never best, what do they say? It's must be a never better time to start an Indigenous business because there's all of this. Everybody's doing Indigenous business stuff. So never a better time to do it. Hey, Leesa. And I'm like, yeah, if you ask me that question now, I'm not sure. So the question, do you what's the likelihood of success if you start a business in the middle of a pandemic? I think I like Claudine's you can grow diamonds out of, what did you say?
Under pressure,
Under pressure you can grow diamonds. So, we've got all of our existing businesses and, people prior to the pandemic were coming in and joining the sector. Hopefully we won't see a decline in people joining. We probably will see a decline in people joining, but those people that do join at this point in time, diamonds are what they're going to turn into. So I just want to say thank you all for being a part of our final town hall. This is my very first town hall hosting, emceeing experience. So thank you all for being here. It's the very last. Oh yeah, I've never done this before, but it's fun. Hopefully I did okay. Thank you. I'm going to put some links in the post. I'm going to link to our micro story program. So we're going to hopefully keep that going. So if you have a micro story, if you're from an Indigenous business in Queensland, we would love to hear from you and showcase your story across social media. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Claude, Tiare and Brett. I absolutely wish you the best. Thank you so much for participating. Tiare and Claude, thank you for being absolute superstars on the hotline. We couldn't have done it without you. And Brett, I can't wait to buy some art from you from Wow Factor Home. I'm sure it's going to be absolutely wow and fabulous. So thank you all for coming, and we will see you again next time. See ya.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Leesa.